Folks, thanks a lot for the 80,000 subscribers. You guys are awesome. But we're not stopping here. Let's push it, folks, to 100,000 subscribers. So give that support to the channel and subscribe and hit that like button down below to reach our goal of 153 likes. And now let's go for it. The anime begins with a man being relentlessly stabbed, narrating his story as he ponders about revealing his name, but ultimately concludes that it doesn't matter at this point, for what truly matters is that he certainly met his end that day. However, the woman who stabs the man calls him Tomokui Kanata. Yet, without knowing why, he wakes up facing a monster that, according to his immediate thoughts, was green and filthy. This elderly monster decides to call a big guy beside him Goblin, while the newly awakened is named Goblin and soon feeds them with some worms. The next day, Kanata wakes up surrounded by a bunch of green and ugly babies, but soon realizes he's one of them too, thus becoming aware that he indeed died and reincarnated as this helpless goblin baby, thus crying as any good baby would in this situation. Apparently, goblins grow much faster than humans, and after a good night's sleep, Gobru was already quite grown up. Wherever or for whatever reason, Kanata has been given a second chance at life and plans to survive with all his might this time, without giving luck a chance. On the fourth day, the new goblins await the last meal they'll receive from the elder. From now on, everyone will have to find their own food, so they take the opportunity to eat well before embarking on their journeys into the outside world. After the meal, Kanata sees that in this world, there's only one sun in the blue sky, along with frightening birds and plants he's never seen before, making it a very different world from what he knew. Goblin comments that it's his first time outside and seems disoriented, and Kanata, now Gobru, introduces himself to the companion, who seems not to know his own name. Gobru approaches the tallest goblin in the new group to form a good hunting pair, and soon the two had developed strategies to avoid starvation in the real world. However, Goblin seemed to be missing a few screws and occasionally did some nonsensical blunders like trying to eat the prey alone, so his friend needed to correct his behavior with little delicacy. After teaching a lesson of camaraderie to the big guy, Gobru examines the rabbit's horn to see if he could make a weapon with it, and a strange vision indicates the item he acquired, but as his partner was drooling from hunger, he decides to ignore the vision and jump straight to lunch to regain his energy with his new friend. On the fifth day, the duo starts using the horn to enhance the effectiveness of their hunts, and at one point they find an even larger horn than the ones they were using, and again a vision invades Gobru's mind, warning that this time he got a medium-sized horn. The goblin is intrigued by these strange visions, and during the meal, he once again receives a warning, now saying that he learned the evasion ability. Faced with this alert of a new ability, the goblin remembers an intense war in his past life, where he mentions possessing a rare absorption ability at that time. With this technique, he could eat practically anything like iron, gold, or poison, and acquire the characteristics of everything he consumed. Unfortunately, Takano lost all the abilities he had in his past life, but lucked out by retaining absorption because in this unknown world, certainly extremely dangerous creatures are lurking, and this power will be a great ally. On the sixth day, a goblin named Gobmi introduces herself and comments to the two hunters how amazing it is that they're eating a rabbit horn because a boy died yesterday after being gored by one of those creatures. Then she recognizes Gobru and emphasizes how beautiful, strong, and intelligent he is. Kakichi asks if he is too, but the girl replies that he's just normal, never taking her eyes off her object of desire. Upon this, Gobru becomes visibly embarrassed by the girl's behavior, but still decides to invite her to join tomorrow's hunt, a proposal she accepts enthusiastically. On the seventh day, as it was raining, they decided to postpone the hunt to the next day, so Gobru takes the opportunity to check the stored items to see if he could make a new weapon. When he entered the depot and separated some tools, he saw a group of human women imprisoned, and even though he knew why they were there, he preferred not to dwell on it. At that moment, the elderly goblin approaches and Gobru reveals that his name is Gobji, the oldest being in that cave. Gobji says that Gobru can level up faster than usual, but as the young man had no idea what was being said, the elder teaches him to check his level by poking his own head. Then he discovers that he's at level 86. According to the old man, when he reaches level 100, Gobru will be able to evolve into a more advanced life form, although only one out of dozens of goblins usually reaches this level in most cases. Alone in his thoughts, Gobru reflects that goblins grow so fast that this elder is only in his 20s, while Gobji announces that the village youths will return soon, so the boy will have the chance to see an evolved hobgoblin and the kind of prey they hunt. On the 8th day, Gobmi joins the group and is tasked with being the support unit, while Gobru fights at medium range and Gobkichi is the frontline attacker. The formation of 3 goblins was working perfectly, and soon the team was stacking prey for their daily meals. Excitedly, Gobmi comments that it's been a long time since she only ate fruits and now she can finally feast on meat. At that moment, Gobru gains the skills Poison, Poison Resistance, Evil Eye, and Thermography, realizing that this snake he hunted was of a much higher level than his. Gobkichi asks to eat the snake's head, but Gobru warns him that he would die from the poison, so he takes care of it himself. On the 9th and 10th days, they went on their usual hunts until on the 11th day, they made the mistake of exploring a mysterious cave out of curiosity. When they got inside, a swarm of bats attacked the goblins, so Gobru devised a last-minute strategy, sending Gobmi to run ahead while Gobkichi opened the shield to defend against the animals. Protected, the two held their position until the goblin leader used his Evil Eye ability, which paralyzed the bats and made them easy prey. Devouring its prey, Gobru gains the abilities of echolocation and vampirism. Meanwhile, another group of goblins watches the feasting group as they themselves starve, a foreboding settling within the community. On the 12th day, well into the night, these hungry goblins gather to take down Gobru. However, with his heightened perception even during sleep, he notices the threat and reacts before the worst can happen, dealing with the 6 aggressors alone as Gobkichi is sound asleep. One of them, after being gored, dies moments later due to poison. Gobru plans to punish the rest, but Gobmi, standing close by, teaches the wrongdoers a lesson. By the 13th day, the trio has developed complex equipment and tactics, hunting feared creatures such as orcs, always synchronized and aware of each other's roles in the hunts. Even when Gobkichi falls in the front line, Gobmi is ready with her weapon to cover the rear, while Gobru, with his venomous horns, remains a considerable threat to the prey. Feeding on the monster's flesh, Gobru gains the abilities of libido, orc language, as well as detect and analyze. Concerned about the previous night's attack, the trio's leader calls upon his friends to carry the prey back to the cave and offer the food to the other goblins. This action would earn them respect within the community, promote goodwill, and prevent future surprise attacks. As the goblins feast, Gobru reflects on how he would never have done this in his past life, but something seems to have changed within him since arriving there. Due to this action, he sleeps peacefully that night, until he receives a vision indicating he has reached the necessary level to evolve into a hobgoblin, and is asked if he wants to change into this more advanced form. At that moment, seeing only a jumble of random letters and desiring only to return to sleep, the goblin chooses yes without knowing what it entails. Consequently, he receives the blessing from the great god of conclusion and origin. On the 14th day, Gobru wakes up almost resembling his appearance before reincarnation, when he was Tomokui Kanata. Meanwhile, Gobkichi has also evolved, becoming even taller. Seeing their friends' achievements, Gobmi is excited by the size and strength they have attained, and even the elder Gobji is surprised by their evolution within just 1 month of being born. Because of his developed and eye-catching body, the giant goblin wants to test his new power, thus inviting Gobru to a 5-minute sparring session without losing their friendship. During the fight, Gobkichi demonstrates strength far above average, threatening to knock down his opponent at any moment with his powerful punches. However, Gobru relies on incredible speed to evade attacks and keep the rival on the defensive. After an intense struggle, Gobru seizes the opportunity of the giant's slowness to counterattack with a sweep that brings down the giant and ends the bout. After the fight, Gobru senses a looming problem from afar, so he asks Gobmi to return to the cave and retrieve the beast they had crafted. Meanwhile, a pack of wolves is drawn by the chase of a group of fleeing rabbits. After finishing off the small animals, even an orc who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time pays with his life. Surveying the situation from afar, Gobru sees in this wolf pack the perfect challenge to test his evolved strength. He instructs Gobmi to lie in wait with the beast and shoot the leader of the wolves with a poison arrow, while he advances alongside Gobkichi to the front line. Without their leader to organize attacks, the beasts become disoriented and easier targets of the hobgoblin duo, who dispatch them quickly. Finally, the leader attempts to rise and continue the fight, but the poison ultimately claims the wolf, adding another prey to the band of green monsters. With the consumption of this new prey, Gobru gains the abilities of Wild Hunt, Leather Armor, and Command. Afterward, he returns to the cave and offers the wolf pack as a meal to the more vulnerable goblins, demanding that they return the food in proportion to what they consume from now on. Unsure how to hunt powerful beasts like black wolves, the small goblins ask for the hobgoblin's help, who promises to teach hunting and weapon crafting to those who don't know how to manage. With this, Gobru is praised by the community and seems to gradually assume its leadership through his actions. He presumes that this is a result of the ability Command, which gave him a vision of the path he wanted to follow in this world. Now his plan is to eat and grow strong enough to achieve the main goal in his mind. On the 17th day, Gobru wakes up the elder Gobji to witness a tragedy that has just happened in the cave. All the human women, perhaps having lost hope in their lives, took poison at the same time and died peacefully in their sleep. So the two goblins prepare a funeral for them. On the 26th day, Gobru had begun training the goblins of his generation, and the newcomer Gobu was falling behind in the running training. At the same time, the leader fed on any promising enemies he could find to learn new skills. Everything was going well during the training until a group of armed goblins approached Gobro's students, who drew their swords to see what was happening. However, Gaju warns that it's just the raiding group and everyone is on the same side. Basically, this raiding group is made up of the parents of Gobro's generation. With the arrival of Chief Hopkin and his subordinates, many important spoils were brought to the village, such as provisions, supplies, and more human women. Since goblin DNA is extremely dominant, mating with other species still results in the birth of goblins. Gobru understands the need for reproduction but disagrees with how they've been doing it. So he approaches the raid leader and asks to take care of the humans. But the big guy doesn't like this intrusion and challenges Gobro, causing widespread tension between the raiding forces and Gobro's subordinates. At this moment, Hobsato and Hobsi, the mage, arrive and ask the two to calm down because an internal war would be very tiresome at this point. To resolve the situation, Hobsato suggests that the leaders of each generation face off in an unarmed duel, and the winner can decide what will be done on behalf of the entire tribe. Hopkin, eager to teach the cheeky kid a lesson, accepts the proposal, and Gobro doesn't oppose either. So in no time, the raid leader had been easily defeated, and Gabji asks where the winning goblin got that rope from. Gobro explains that this fabric is produced by his body like saliva. Inside, he celebrates the fact that he ate that demonic spider. With his great performance, Hobzet confesses that the young goblin has potential, while Hobseto celebrates the birth of someone so promising in his absence. With the victory, Gobro now becomes the leader of the village, and none of Hoboken's subordinates rebel against this decision. Later, the new leader of the goblins gathers the captured humans and announces that he has forbidden anyone to touch them, nor does he intend to do so. On the contrary, Gobru will take care of all of them until returning the women to some human city. One of them asks what they have to do in return, and the goblin reveals that he would love to possess the human knowledge they hold. As Gobru well knows, they were part of a group of traders that was attacked during their journey by the goblins. All the men were killed, leaving only the women, and perhaps he can learn a thing or two about the customs of this species. On the 28th day, the village chief appears to feed the prisoners, and apparently, they were handling the situation better than he imagined. Gobro always tries to prepare meals with the spoils ingredients, so the humans can eat something they're already accustomed to, as well as a means to keep their sanity amid all this stress. Analyzing humanity, he realizes that they don't evolve like goblins, but in exchange, they have a wide variety of occupations. The quietest girl is an evaluator and blacksmith, for example. The twins are a cook, and the other, a tailor. The girl with glasses claims to be an alchemist. Lastly, the brave redhead who greeted him upon arrival should be a novice warrior, and Gobru believes she could participate in the training in the future. Speaking of training, Gobru leads another day of practice, and many goblins are exhausted with the tough training philosophy from the village chief. Two of them try to rise to the leader's demands, but are soon put in their place by force. Gobru's idea is to put hunting aside for a while to develop other group exercises, as well as to teach the rules he established. On the 31st day, rain covered the sky outside the cave, while Gobru and Gobkichi engaged in a very intense training duel under the gaze of the other villagers, including the resentful Hopkin, who lost all his prestige after losing to Gobru. Obviously, the proud hobgoblin wouldn't take this lightly, and along with a group of other goblins, they gather at night to take advantage of the human women who are under the chief's care. However, Gobru overheard the criminal's conversation and managed to prevent a disaster in time, eliminating one of the goblins and apprehending the rest. Addressing the leader of the wrongdoers, Gobru reminds him that not long ago he made it clear that the humans should not be touched. In turn, Hopkin replies that a kid would never understand the sweet taste of a woman, so Gobru knocks him out with a kick. Then he apologizes for scaring the women, and the redhead cries in fear at what she just witnessed. Other goblins arrive to see what's going on, and the chief asks Gobkichi to drive the prisoners outside, while Gobmi must wake up and gather everyone to see what the leader is about to do. So even in the rain, the village people gather outside and watch Gobru mercilessly beat the criminals, setting an example of the importance of following the tribe's rules. Gobru stopped beating the prisoners when they were about to die, so they would lose their lives in a long and painful way. Gobkin, who received the worst punishment, only died the next morning. On the 32nd day, the chief gathers his group to hunt a tricorn. Trying to bring it down with an arrow, the animal's resistant scale prevented penetration, but with his spider webs, Gobru managed to immobilize the horse for Gobkichi and him to finish the job. The opponent was difficult to kill, but the reward was certainly worth it, with Gobru gaining several powerful abilities such as scaling, accelerated healing, and triple thrust. This last ability allows a single blow to cause 3 impacts at once. Later, during the night, Gobru tries to rest after another intense day of hunting, until the red-haired girl appears and lies down beside the goblin. He knows the girl had a rough night yesterday, so he lets her sleep with him. On the 33rd day, the chief notices that Goblin had joined the human bed with him, using the goblin's arms as pillows all night long, which made them sore for some time. A little later, to everyone's surprise, Gobu had become a hobgoblin after so many intense trainings, and everything was going well with Gobkichi as the captain of the heavy protection warriors. Gobi commanded the long-range attack unit, while Hobsato led the light armor group, focused on mobility. Gobu took over the rear support, prioritizing various different tasks, and Hobsi, the village's only mage, would act as captain of the magical force, but so far there were no mages to be trained. On this day, Gobru left the training to the captains and traveled to the depths of the forest to devour a good variety of prey. During his journey, he encounters a distracted tricorn on the banks of a river, so he decides to test his first attack magic against the animal. So he invokes Phase 1 of the conclusion magic, the Gi Durg, and takes the horse's head. Being honest with himself, Gobru admits he got a little arrogant after casting his first spell, but other challenges would still arise as he advanced north through the forest until late afternoon. Suddenly, he sees a huge trail of blood and instantly remembers old teachings from the old Gaji, who always insisted that no one should have the terrible idea of exploring the northern forest, because deep down there exists a huge scarlet creature called the Red Bear. Following the tracks, Gobru realizes that not even the powerful tricorn scale was able to save him from this beast, until the creature itself appears in front of the goblin, with its heavy steps and scary appearance, plus a growl capable of freezing the soul of the greatest hobgoblin. Any individual with a sense of danger would have fled, but Gobru decided to think of a plan to bring down this giant thing, because he couldn't resist the possibility of gaining some surreal ability from this magnificent monster. Therefore, once again, he invokes the Gi Durg spear, ready to use everything he has at hand to defeat the Red Bear. Meanwhile, back in the village, Gobmi is worried about Gobru not having returned yet, so Gobu decides to ask for him inside the cave. Inside, none of the resident goblins had any idea where the chief would be, but Gabi thanked her friend's effort anyway. As for the village leader, his magic spear managed to tear off one of the bear's limbs, which he placed his arm in front of his body to prevent his death. Still, just the left paw of that monster was already capable of causing fatal damage, and Gobru believes that not even the refined scale armor he took from the tricorn can help in any way, so Gobru tries to crack the enemy's skull with his axe, but it is more resistant than the goblin thought. Unsuccessful, Gobru pours a large amount of web to immobilize the bear, but its strength is so enormous that its bonds did not control it. At that moment, the bear surprises Gobru by spitting out a huge fireball that ignites the entire forest around. Amidst the chaos, the bear begins to leave, thinking it has devastated its enemy, but the goblin was healing behind a tree to avoid being seen. Gobru had never seen a bear do that, but now he has to deal with his decision to hunt down this monstrous prey, even knowing he has a lot to lose in the process. Thus, the tribe chief imbues himself with some defense spell and attacks the red bear, provoking another fireball from the animal onto him. However, this time Gobru was prepared for the impact and protected by a magical shield. He approaches the beast until he manages to stick his sword into its throat. Nevertheless, the animal was able to grab the goblin and throw him away, causing massive damage. At least the blade stuck in the creature's mouth would prevent it from spitting fire, and that could be the way for the goblin to achieve victory. However, the bear remains steadfast in its posture, while Gobru believes he could die if he takes another blow like that. Anyway, the hunger that the hobgoblin feels was speaking louder, so he challenges the red bear again with his two-handed axe. At first, you hit the bear and escape the retaliation with his above-average speed, but in a direct confrontation, Gobru's cut-off arm flies through the forest filled with blood. On the 34th day, the early morning arises as Gobru wakes up from his faint. Even losing his arm and with the bear's claws embedded in his chest, the goblin had managed to defeat the animal, killing it once and for all. Unable to muster the strength to get up, Gobru grabs the beast's paw to his chest and bites with difficulty, thus gaining the heavy damage and overwhelming strength abilities. With that, he accumulated enough points to evolve into an ogre, and as he loses consciousness once again, Gobru manages to choose yes. Upon returning to the village, everyone gawked at the size Gobru had become. Just 1 month after being born, the hobgoblin had now defeated the Lord of the Northern Forest and become an ogre, thus becoming a leadership figure for the tribe, and some females even became more forward in the face of all this leadership. As he searched for something more decent to wear, he encountered the human girls along the way and took some time to convince them that he was still Gobru. Aside from that, Gabi persisted in pinching the ogre's leg for some reason. Later, he handed over his equipment to the human blacksmith, who promised to fix the axe and had made a knife with the spirit stone. Therefore, the leader thanked the blacksmith, showing his affection for her. At the same time, now the redhead had joined the goblin in the habit of pinching the chief. The twins were assigned to a task, but they found it too heavy for just the two of them. Hence, Gobru granted 3 female goblins from the logistics squad. With the humans participating in the village's processes, Gobru found it fantastic that mortal enemies of the goblins had adapted so well. Thinking they would make good wives, the leader asked if the 2 twins would like to marry him, but it seemed that Gobmi and the redhead didn't quite like the idea. As for the alchemist, she resumed making potions, and Gobru discovered that she had produced a poison for self-defense, but after getting to know kind goblins like Gobru, she gave up on mixing that poison into his food. Still, the alchemist remarked that the ogre had developed so much that not even that deadly liquid might be able to bring him down. So the ogre lifted the girl and showed that he was still in the growth phase, eliciting a typical smile from the beautiful intellectual that pleased the chief. Again, the infernal duo showed they were becoming less and less happy with this nonsense, but in the end, Gobru managed to calm the beasts and get all the girls back on track. On the 36th day of his life, the village leader decided not to participate in combat training anymore because even his light punches almost killed the normal goblins, and even Gobkichi's armor almost broke in this play. While healing one of the victims, Gobkichi informs that he's going to hunt in a strange way, seeming shaken by something. On that day in the village, Gami and Habsado went hunting together. Gobu dubbed for spirit stones, and the redhead focused on her combat training. Meanwhile, Gobru conversed with the mage Habze about his left arm that was devoured, which the leader managed to adapt after eating a slime, until he brings up the topic of Gobkichi, and the mage comments that it depends on how much effort he puts in. However, Gobru notices that the goblin was holding a book he was finishing reading, so he completely forgets about his friend's matter and keeps asking for his book back, while Gobji observes the hilarious scene. According to Gobru, it was his most relaxing day in a long time. On the 37th day, everyone was having lunch peacefully after the morning training, until Hobu arrives with a bloody carbuncle, so the ogre hastens to provide first aid. Hobu explains that she was digging in the wall when the carbuncle fell. As she lost a lot of blood, they need to get a blood-forming reagent from the alchemist. Sometime later, the little wound wakes up, and after hearing what happened, she introduces herself as Returner and thanks for the treatment she received, even though she's a stranger. After all, she was being pursued by humans who were eyeing the valuable magical stone on her forehead. Therefore, Returner begs Gobru and his goblins to drive these adventurers out of the forest as she is in serious danger. While listening to the plea, Gobru realizes that this is an artificial carbuncle created by the legendary mage Velvet to guard his master's secret treasure. Attacked by humans, her core that keeps her alive was damaged, so there's little time left for her. Probably, this secret treasure contains several legendary class items that Velvet accumulated during his lifetime. Returner comments that her master hated humans, so she prefers to deliver the treasure to the goblins before the men steal it. Thus, the chief summons everyone to announce that today they will all go together to the secret treasure room of a millennial mystic mage. Then, Gobru asks for the knife with the spirit stone that the blacksmith made, even though he intends to intimidate the humans and try to expel them without violence. However, if the peaceful approach fails, he will have to defend himself through brute force. After dealing with the enemies, all the goblins will pass through the hole that Gobru inadvertently dug towards Velvet's treasure. Approaching the goal, Gobru orders everyone to hide while he deals alone with the invaders. In no time, the humans were after the protagonist, noticing that there were also strange species of ogre there. Gobru reflects that he is not a variant, but rather a rare species. Anyway, the men need to make way to complete their mission, but the first one to attack thinks his invisibility would deceive the opponent. By making the enemies witness his power, the ogre announces that they are inside someone's house, and after killing whoever they saw on the way, there is no salvation for this crime. The criminals are frightened by that ogre speaking their language and attack before Gobru could offer a peaceful retreat. He even tries this proposal at some moments, but the opponents are determined to win this battle with violence. The 3 at the rear are equipped with high-quality magical items, but still, they seem to not know what they're doing, and Gobru thinks they loaded up on good equipment even without knowing how to use it properly. This inexperience makes them repeat their attacks and become predictable until a mage manages to cast a level 3 spell on the goblin leader's face. However, instead of bringing victory to the humans, this magic provoked the ogre's fury, so he summons a small earthquake to destabilize the opponents and leave them vulnerable. After that, the other goblins ambush the men, and Gobru promises to make them regret not having listened. So after stealing and dividing their belongings, a tribe devours all the humans. The meal granted the leader occupation abilities that ranged between the Templar and Archmage classes, and furthermore, the criminals' items were very valuable, like a magic backpack that carries 200 items and a ring that hides the user's information. By consuming the items, Gobru absorbs these capabilities, and now he can store 1,200 items in a magic chest. After fulfilling their part of the deal, the goblin village is led to the treasure room at the back. Next, the deceased Velvet returned thanks the tribe for their help and assures them that his master is equally pleased. According to the carbuncle, he was extremely talented at dealing with nature spirits, so the goblins will be able to extract several spirit stones from the treasure. After that, the small being thanks them one last time and bids farewell, disappearing forever into Gobru's hand, leaving his spirit stone with him. By consuming the stone, he learns the Golden Rule ability. Lastly, the group silently prays for the carbuncle, and then cleans up the treasure room, tossing everything into the magic chest. However, before leaving, Gobru interprets leaving Velvet there as dishonorable, so he decides to cremate him. As he does so, a gauntlet drops from the wizard's body, and as the tribe chief puts it on the devoured left arm, it releases several metal tentacles that attach to the ogre's body until they become one with him. With this legendary item equipped, he gains the self-evolution ability and 3 more besides. Moreover, the arm can be rotated and transformed as he wishes, as well as produce poisons and metallic cables. With this, after completing the returner's mission, the goblins enjoy the drink among the spoils and celebrate the successful accomplishment. On the 38th day, Gobru evaluated the items obtained with a blacksmith, and indeed there were many legendary and magical ones. On the 39th, he distributed the magical items to the current 15 hobgoblins. Gobru himself took the scarlet long spear, Galsigal Bay, and the magical bracelet Egrza. Legendary items like these are responsible for causing wars between nations, so Goblin society had reached another level. Later, everyone leveled up while gathering ingredients for bear stew, until the twins prepared the delicious meal. However, Gobru was worried about what to do with the redhead, as she wasn't ready to fight yet. On the 40th day, a new leader will be chosen among the hobgoblins through a competition, and their strength led the leader to assemble a mercenary team. The next day, the chief set out early to track unknown prey, such as a golden spider with an apparently valuable shell. By consuming it, he learned to summon golden threads, as well as mimic the spider's shell. Next, a red-horned deer with quartz caught the ogre's attention and soon became a meal too. Then he wandered through the forest until he came across a magnificent tree where the legendary dryads lived, famous for seducing males of intelligent species and then devouring them. According to Gabji, all dryads without exception are very attractive to males as their charm never fails, and his plan is to be seduced by one when he is about to die. Soon one of these creatures was enchanted by the ogre's ripped belly emanating power and strength, so she invited him to wash his leaf loincloth in that little tank of grayish skin. Even with the tent pitched, Gobru firmly resisted the seductive powers of that creature abandoned by God, but to ensure he wouldn't end up as Ogre Barbecue, he debuts his libido ability to turn the dryad into lunch by feeling her immense power for 5 straight hours of a stock clock, thus acquiring the congratulations ability. After the mythological act, the two bid farewell with a see you later vibe, then Gobru continues his journey until he discovers a lake with a waterfall. Then, while he washed his instrument of love, lizard men surrounded the ogre, but soon they all became food without much trouble. Following that, he used his deadly silver arm to make another victim and feel that he was becoming more and more powerful. On the 42nd day, he discovered that 2 goblins had everything to become mages, so they were passed on to Hobsy, who was so excited that her smile sent shivers even to the village's top leader. After that, studying enchantment, he discovers that it is an ability that alters matter, but when practicing with the blacksmith, the woman seemed annoyed about something. The day after that, Gami was also turning her back on the ogre, so he decides to ask the people what's going on, but no one had any idea why he was being rejected. After all, the redhead was also giving him the side-eye, and the twins even put poison in the leader's food. Finally, he decides to talk to the alchemist, and she reveals that all the girls are jealous after Mr. Gobru's little morning escapade. Not that anyone snitched, but it's just that the lady dryad left some love bites on the ogre's neck, giving away that the hunt in the forest paid off. Anyway, the alchemist says she understands how the girls feel, and she quickly gives the chief a kiss on the cheek to make it clear that she is not a dryad but can devour the ogre whenever he wants. Behind them, Gabmi exudes her hatred and promises never to forgive Gobru for this betrayal, but shortly afterward, she retracts and asks to join in, while the other girls decide they don't want to be left behind. Faced with this, Gobru seriously reflects on the proposal, and shortly afterward, he learns the abilities Fluid Jet and Multiple Stab. On the 44th day, Gobru's perception skill kicks in as unknown beings arrive in the village. As they reach the entrance, the leader steps out to greet the strangers. Despite being in the monster's domain, an arrogant elf questions how a mere goblin can keep a noble like him waiting, then reveals that the humans are eyeing a secret elven treasure and will soon attack. They seek the goblins' help in exchange for a fair reward, offering food to sustain the village for months, an offer Gabji finds irresistible. However, the monster chief declines, demanding respect from the outsiders in his own home, faced with the elf leader's arrogance. Elves see goblins as barbarians, prompting their leader to draw his sword to teach the inferior being a lesson. But a small display of power from the ogre makes the elf kneel, and with the leader of this race subdued, Gobru orders the elven archers in ambush to lower their bows. Ultimately, the goblin refuses to help simply because he's not interested, but asserts that as a resident of the forest, he will gladly fight if humans invade and cause havoc. So slamming his Galsigal Bay to the ground, red spears emerge from the earth, putting all elves at risk, which was the final straw for them to retreat, terrified of the ogre's power. The next day, Gobru hunted about 20 gray slimes in the depths of the forest, and by consuming them, gained the abilities Physical Attack Tolerance, Self-Double Creator, and Fluid Replacement Reconstruction. Putting some of his blood on a rock, a double formed from the substance, allowing Gobru to share his vision, seen through the eyes of the small copy. On the 46th day, the village made dresses for Gobby's party using fabric soaked with his blood double, meaning they could be used as emergency radios. A day later, Gobru's double spots the arrival of a troop of intruding elves, and as they reach the entrance, Gobru roars from within the cave, paralyzing the opponents, then emerges from outside and releases webs, immobilizing all enemy units. Soon, Gobru was interrogating the elf leader inside the goblin tree, and their leader explains that the ogre's barbaric behavior tarnished his pride, hence the ogre deserved to die. Some elven soldiers reveal they tried to stop their leader from attacking but failed. Thus, the goblin chief announces that the elven leader is already dead for his insolence, but the others can compete against the goblin people, and whoever wins will have their life spared. After the conflict of the 23 participating elves, 6 of them, all male, lost as Gobru secretly manipulated the opponent's formation to prevent the beautiful women from dying. By consuming the defeated elves, the ogre acquired survival skills in the forest, archery talent, and tracking abilities. As for the winning elves, though they thought they would be free, the enemy chief takes them all as prisoners, claiming they stepped into goblin territory to take goblin lives, which is unforgivable. Behind them, Gobji knows the night will be long with such beautiful elf women around, but Gobru makes it clear that the old man shouldn't touch any of them. Gobji argues that it's been so long since he wet the biscuit that his crutch might end up atrophying, so the chief promises to consider it. As for the surviving male elf, he will be of no use, hence becoming a snack for the giant ogre. On the 40th day, Gobkichi reaches level 100 by hunting a bear with his huge two-handed axe. The next day, the creature had evolved into an ogre and reached about 3 meters tall, taller than its leader. After all, its evolution was a variant of the norm, as its skin had been burned by the blessing of the demigod of fire, with its shiny texture as hard as steel. According to Gobkichi, now Gobro has a worthy opponent to train against, and speaking of which, he is eager for a rematch against the chief. Without wasting time, the two gather the entire tribe to witness the fight, which once again becomes balanced. However, even though Gobkichi's strength has developed to the point of posing a danger to Gobro, when it comes to fighting techniques, the leader is still superior, leading to his victory. However, he had to acknowledge that Gobkichi is his official rival, even though he remains undefeated. With the night of that day arriving, Gobru was exhausted from the earlier fight, and not knowing if he was dreaming or not, he sees a spirit asking for forgiveness for something and rewarding Gobru with the ability to summon an unknown familiar. Then the ogre finally wakes up without understanding what had just happened. On the 51st day, Gobu carries her leader for an important matter, and soon ahead she shows that 4 more members of the village have become hobgoblins. The human alchemists have finished the aptitude tests among them all, discovering that one of them had magical aptitude while Gobby has the potential to be a cleric. Gobda promises to heal as many allies as possible before calling the leader Big Brother. Gobram doesn't understand why he was called that, and the future cleric argues that all goblins are brothers and sisters by birth. Beside him, Habsai had also evolved into an ogress this morning, becoming part of the Lord's lineage as a half-lord sorceress. The marks she had on her body resembled those of Gobro, and soon the sorceress was eager to test the power pulsating in her body. Outside the headquarters, she manipulated fireballs that were hurled at nearby trees, causing several gigantic explosions in the forest. Even in the face of such devastation, Gobsu felt she could repeat the feat about 20 times with so much power flowing through her body. Gobro observes that as she is a half-lord, her abilities are slightly inferior to those of the real species, but soon the sorceress will be able to reach her maximum form over time. Because of the evolution, Habse is rewarded with equipment as a reward, and Habseto celebrates her friend's development and hopes to evolve soon to accompany her. With so many evolutions, Gobru sees that his theory was correct, because these evolutions begin after about a month of life depending on the conditions in which they grow, but not everyone can do well even with the good conditions of the tribe, remaining on the sidelines of society. On the 52nd day, the leader and Gobkichi were carrying the game back to the village when they came across a group of goblins. Upon asking where they were going at this hour, Gobru heard that the group had decided to leave because they felt they were falling behind even compared to the younger ones, despite working hard in training, and they couldn't even have a night of pleasure. The group feared the leader would execute them for deserting, but since they were only carrying the equipment they themselves had created, Gobru wished the fugitives good luck and, as a gesture of mercy, offered a mithril knife to help with survival hunting. The day after that, Gobru saw an orc carrying a dead man through the forest. After eliminating the orc, the ogre consumed the human to acquire the monster tamer ability. At night, the human alchemist presented her boss with a drink made with alcohol, an object of desire for the leader for a long time. On the 54th day, Gobru informed the others that the goblins of their parents' generation had left the village, and if anyone else wanted to leave, they just had to raise their hand and would not be prevented from going and would also receive a farewell gift. However, no one volunteered to abandon the village, so Gobru proposed a toast with his new drink made from alcohol, popularly known as kachaza. A day after that, the tribe seemed calm, so the leader took some time and produced earrings with his blood, which would later serve as transmitters. On the 56th day, the transmitters had been distributed throughout the village, allowing for long-distance communication among the members of this society. After that day, Gobru began to show splendid progress in hunting, and upon noticing that the tricorn she had captured was almost unharmed, Chief Gobru decided to use the monster tamer ability he had learned from the dead man to tame the animal. On the 58th day, the village chief tamed increasingly larger and more efficient familiars, such as a brown bear and the leader of the pack of black wolves, which was now the pet responsible for protecting the human women. A day later, finally, the redhead, who had never stood out in training despite Gobru's faith, turned the page and now showed talent in combat. Although Gobru had arranged fights for her only in one-on-one matches, the woman managed to kill 3 kobolds at once. After the fight, the redhead asked for a piece of kobold thigh to eat, but before eating, she realized that she now had a new occupation. With her eyes burning a fiery red, she chased after a swift deer with quartz horns and executed the animal upon catching it. Upon this, Gobru discovered that the redhead's occupation was that of a Norse soldier, and now she had to eat monsters regularly to avoid dying. But this provided incredible development as a reward. Later, the chief was alerted that another goblin had been attacked by humans nearby, so he realized that the war between men and elves had already begun. On the 60th day, Gobru woke up to his perception indicating a mass escape of kobolds, but the dark tone of his mind did not allow him to identify the pursuers. With this, the leader organized the goblins to prepare for the arrival of the enemies, and he made it clear that the kobolds should only be faced after the real opponents were destroyed. When the kobolds passed to the safety of the goblins' homes, skeletal warriors emerged right behind them, so Gobru ordered the crossbowmen to shoot, but the arrows were useless against this type of enemy. As the horde advanced, Gobkichi asked for a new order from Gobru, who, upon concentrating, detected something large behind the skeletons, perhaps the source that created these magical warriors. Gobkichi knocked down several skeletons in front of him, while Gobseto was about to be surrounded by an enemy group. At that moment, upon studying the opponents, Gobru ordered everyone to drop their weapons because sharp blades were useless against the skeletons, unlike the good old fist. As the goblins fought the opponents, the leader encouraged his subordinates to level up as much as they could because this was a great opportunity for everyone to develop. After some time of fighting, Gobru took responsibility for finishing off the remaining skeletons. So if you plan to finish everything in just 10 seconds, counting each of his steps as 1 second up to the 10th, maneuvering his spear through the enemy hordes while defeating opponents along the way, he advanced until he executed the leader of the enemy warriors. To his surprise, he had finished the fight 3 seconds earlier, and by eating a defeated enemy, he gained the ability to create lesser undead, in addition to improving his armor and magic absorption. After the conflict, the refugee kobolds bowed before the lord of the goblins and recounted that they had accidentally unearthed the treasure of the legendary mage Velvet, which the goblins had buried. Consequently, the guardian of the skeletons who guarded this treasure awoke. To escape the advance of the skeletons, the kobolds risked fleeing to the cave where the dark ogre, also known as Gobru, lived. The kobolds were aware that the ogre had executed many of their kind, but now they were alive because of him. So the ogre showed mercy and promised to heal the wounded to continue the conversation later. After that, Gobru looked around and realized that more and more interesting groups were appearing to join him, whether by choice or by force. On day 61, Gobru and Gobkichi returned to hunting together after a long time. Along the way, they spotted 12 armed human soldiers. The ogres trailed the men and found them hiding by the side of a road. Using his web as a listening device near an enemy soldier's foot, Gobru discovered that they had come to capture the elf chief's daughter on her way back from some festival that was going to happen there, and that some elf had leaked this information. So the goblin leader hid in the forest at night near where the elf chief's daughter would pass with her convoy. Looking at the girl, Gobru always understood elves as naturally attractive, but she was above the others. Suddenly, a human ambush is revealed and kills all the elves, and a man knocks out the elf leader's daughter to take her away. Gobru then emerges and immobilizes all the opposing men with his web. Afterward, he carries the elf while Gopkichi carries all the captured enemy soldiers on his shoulders. The next day, Gobru eliminates one by one the prisoners until he extracts from the last one the information that humans plan to attack in 20 days. By eating the 12 prisoners, he gains numerous varied abilities. After some time, the elf finally wakes up and Gobru observes that she has a wing, something that the others don't have. Desperate, the girl thinks the ogre wants to steal her chastity, but within a few minutes, he manages to explain what really happened to the convoy escorting her. Drinking a medicinal tea from the alchemist, the elf freaks out once again upon discovering that everyone is dead and blames the ogre for letting them die without doing anything, as if it were his fault. In turn, Gobru makes it clear that he has nothing to do with this conflict between elves and humans, and reveals that he has an informant among the elves themselves, so the elf should worry about her own race before pointing fingers at others. With that said, the elf bursts into tears while Gobru announces that he will return her home tomorrow after spending the night in the cave. In the middle of the night, Gobji sees the beautiful girl sleeping in the cave and asks the chief if he can put an end to his long period of inactivity. If you catch my drift, but the leader makes it clear that the old pervert should stay away from the woman. On day 63, on the way to return the elf chief's daughter, Gobru wants to know about the wing on the girl's back, so she explains that it's a characteristic of high elves and most advanced beings of the race, and that it's usually hidden on the body, but as she is inexperienced, the girl ends up exposing the wing unnecessarily. After 3 hours of walking, they reach the elf village and Gobru identifies about 25 of them hidden in the trees, pointing their mithril arrows at him and Gobkichi. Noticing this, the elf chief's daughter shouts that the ogres saved her life, so the group is welcomed and taken to the leader of that village. Upon reaching him, the daughter embraces her relieved father, who is happy to see her safe and sound and thanks the monsters for it. But the goblin leader gets straight to the point and confesses that he did not return the elf out of mere kindness. Thus, the elf rewards the ogres with a precision bow of ancient gods called Failnot. The girl questions her father for giving a family relic to the ogres, but he thinks the most important thing is to have his daughter back safely. In compensation, Gobru reveals useful information about the movement of humans for the start of the war, and to strengthen the bond between the two villages. In an exchange of objects, the elf gave mithril equipment while Gobru provided spiritual stones and magical items. With this mutual trust, the elf chief asks Gobru if he knows anything about the elite unit of 20 elves that disappeared recently, but the ogre pretends not to, although it was the unit that Gobru devoured days ago. When it's time to leave, the elves give the ogres medicines and fine drinks from their village, and Gobru gets excited about the top-notch drink. Upon returning to the tribe, the first thing he does is taste the drink, and its rich flavor makes the monster transcend his mind and desire an ever-closer relationship with the accommodating elves. A day later, Gobmi had evolved into a damper variant, and 8 more goblins had evolved into hobgoblins. Gobmi gained the blessing of the ice god, which gave her the ability to manipulate ice, as well as making enemies fight each other by seducing them with her evil eyes despite the weakness to sunlight. However, the most impressive thing for Gobru was that Gobmi now had a strangely familiar appearance to him. As for Gobu, she evolved into a half-earth lord, able to manipulate the ground and identify weak points in the rocky bed, as well as using lightning magic that detects gems. Hobsato evolved into a half-bloody lord, which controls blood and transforms it into weapons. Finally, Gobru notices that the locations and forms are different, but all the tattoos that came with the transformations are similar, and the leader wants to discover the power they grant one day. Faced with so many evolutions, Gobji renames Hobzi as Spelsi, Gobmi as Dami, Hobsato as Bloodsato, and Hobiu as Toray. Gobkichi is now Grokichi, Gobi is Hobby, and Gobru is now called Obru. After this celebration, Obru reflects that the elves will seek help from the goblins when the war against the humans begins, and so he distributes more communicators among the new kobolds of the tribe. But as for the imprisoned elves, they refuse to put on the earrings because it would be a great dishonor for their race to disfigure or adorn their ears in any way. Thus, Obru had no choice but to shatter the pride of the elves to convince them otherwise. Soon the tribe had several new recruits from the new species, and the chief planned a practical combat training against lesser undead created by him. These skeletons had dark armor and bones, unlike the weaker ones that fought without any equipment. Therefore, even the elves had difficulty even with mithril weapons that have an advantage over the undead. On this day, Obru realized that building a relationship based on trust is more effective than through terror because of the cooperation of the elves. On day 65, Obru tested new abilities by creating different creatures with his mana-based invocations, but the fact that they were ghosts prevented him from feeding on them to absorb their abilities. So as interesting as they were for war training, these invocations were purified in a few seconds in the daylight. With time focusing on training elves and kobolds, the tribe now numbered over 100 members, though kobolds were considered weak compared to other species. Therefore, Obru feared for their lives when the war started, deciding to intensify their training. The next day, he went to the cave where the kobolds lived, gathered everyone's belongings, and had Terra collapse the entrance with earth magic to prevent new skeletons from invading their territory. Additionally, he trained the kobolds to hunt in groups to increase the numbers of black wolf companions, capturing and converting 20 wolves to the tribe. Moreover, on that day, a boar as tough as stone crossed paths with the goblins, but Terra sent it straight to the pot with just one punch. At night, the human blacksmith prepared the axe damaged by Obru in the fight against the red bear, enhancing it with a blend of spiritual stone, iron, and mithril. The chief was impressed by the blacksmith's new skills as she had become experienced in handling the spiritual stone, becoming an elemental blacksmith. A day later, he resumed hunting with the kobolds, but Ogrokichi called the chief aside to confess his long-standing crush on Terra, which had only intensified since she became a half-Earth Lord. For this reason, the Ogre couldn't contain himself anymore, but didn't know what to say to her. Thus, Ogre replied that tonight would be the moment for his friend to confess to the suitor, and Ogrokichi must report back tomorrow on how it went. Having said that, Ogrokichi invited Terra for a walk and revealed his desire to be happy with her. As she responded, the ogre let out a deafening roar. On day 68, the giant red ogre felt so light that he landed more blows than usual on Ogro, all thanks to the chief. Ogro imagined everything had gone well because Terra had discussed it with Dami yesterday, so they set the stage for the two. The leader's only concern was that Kichi might exhaust Terra with all this excitement. After training, this quartet went hunting together and encountered many insects they had never seen before, which was great for collecting tough and armored materials, as well as abilities like Silent Death and Exoskeleton Shell. Ogro tested the exoskeleton, and not even Ogrokichi's heavy axe could pierce that resilient armor. Despite this, the ogre preferred his original attire for walking around, but upon removing his armor, he noticed that his clothes had been used in creating the exoskeleton. Additionally, with the creation of Elytra, Ogru could craft insect wings, though he still needed a lot of practice to avoid crashing into a tree along the way. At the end of the day, they made a boar stew, and Ogru gained the abilities Fury and Tail Attack. On day 69, after a long period without rain, it returned to those lands. Ogru took the opportunity to intensify the training of the red-haired human, who had evolved her skills to no longer resemble a poodle, but rather a Goblin. After training the redhead, he went to the blacksmith, who had been discussing new weapon ideas with the elf sisters Karu and Aru, and soon a repeating crossbow was developed. Ogru asked them to mass-produce this equipment. At night, the leader helped the chef sisters, who had also developed as head chefs, and after dinner, Ogru asked them to recreate dishes from his past life, like French fries. After that, the ogre went to the alchemist to discuss the production of magical items, and through the bones in the black skeleton, she discovered a way to locally freeze the target, her first discovery as an item creator. Upon handing the bone to the leader, the alchemist asked him to take care of this weapon as if it were her, which caught the ogre off guard. But before giving the alchemist a love hug, the other women arrived in time to accuse the chief of hugging one of them without the others, so Ogro put an end to that problem. The next day, some elves were at the cave entrance at the behest of Ogro's friend, the elf chief. Those warriors crossed the cave and met their former companions, but the communicator they used made their appearances change to those of dark elves. Then the elf messenger informed that the human army was advancing on the Kudal forest, and alone they wouldn't be able to drive out the invaders. The elf chief made it clear that any price must be paid to ensure survival in the homeland, but if the goblins refuse to help, the pact between the two tribes will be annulled. Nonetheless, Ogru accepted the invitation, provided he could act freely in the conflict, and gave the messenger a bracelet for the elf chief to communicate with the goblin tribe. So with the impending war, Ogru released his clones into the forest to track enemy movements. Reciting the famous saying, "If you want peace, prepare for war," he gathered all troops to put into practice everything they had been training for over these days, because from now on, it would be a mercenary group, a professional military force working for money, and the name of this group would be Parabellum. In response, all members of the tribe shouted the name of Parabellum, while the supreme leader eagerly awaited his army's first job. Hey folks, if you're digging this anime and want to see more, drop a like down below and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We need your support to hit 90,000 subscribers. Every subscription counts and helps us grow our community. Catch you in the next one.